Good morning, everybody, and I want to apologize for starting the overnight action here at MarketStream.live a little bit late. We were having some technical difficulties with the cameras, so again, apologize. My name is Joseph Cusick from the Cusick Group, securities provided by MoneyBlock. With your overnight report, we're going to start right away with what's going on in Asia. The Japanese Nikkei gained about 1.1%, just basically looking like the dollar-yen pair started to play into the psyche of Japanese investors. We saw a brief 50-pip move to the upside in the yen-dollar pair trade. Yen got a little stronger. Bank of Japan was implementing some fixed-rate purchases. Basically, what the Bank of Japan governor came out and said, Kuroda, he basically is going to do everything to keep his rates low. He sees no need to follow suit with whatever the U.S. is doing. So that had a pop in the yen overnight, and the markets in Japan popped as well. Taking a look at the EWJ ETF, went out at 49.40 last night. Still pricing in the potential for this underlying to move about 51 cents either up or down, or about 1.2% going into expiration this Friday. Implied volatility still very low at 17.8%, and there was really no notable names in the Nikkei that were moving, so should expect a pretty much so upside to flat open in EWJ, but we'll keep an eye on that, especially if the currencies start to move. Taking a look at Hong Kong and the Hang Seng, down about 0.1%. Hong Kong did come out with their unemployment rate, which held firm right at around 3.4%. That basically had financials and gaming names struggling in Hong Kong. Nothing notable as far as large cap stocks on the move in Hong Kong overnight. EWH ETF went out last night at $20.48. The options are pricing in for the remainder of this week that the underlying EWH could move about 1.3%. That ETF does track those large cap stocks in Hong Kong. Vol is mid-range right now, so a little bit of an expectation of potential movement going into the end of this week, but not huge. China's Shanghai Composite added about 0.1%. The People's Bank of China lowered again for the 10th consecutive day the yuan fix, moved it down a little bit. Basically, markets were relatively flat to in the green. FXI, and I'm changing the ETF that I talk about because I want something with a little more liquidity on the option side. FXI, which is the China large cap ETF, trading at 35.83. The options are pricing in the potential for FXI to move about 1.5% going into the end of this week, or around 57 cents, either up or down. Vol is relatively inexpensive. What is that telling you? For those of you that don't know what implied volatility is, that just means that there's not a heightened forecast of violent moves in FXI. We finally want to take a look at India as far as Asia is concerned. The Sensex slipped about 0.3%. Tata Consultancy and Tata Motors both outperforming right now. These are big components of the EPI, the ETF that I talk about that tracks Indian stocks. They both make up about 8% of that ETF. So when you see that these two names are to the upside, that could be a positive. You see that the Sensex, which is the index that tracks Indian stocks, is up about 0.3%. We're going to watch EPI this morning on the open. It's went out last night at 1977. Roughly, the options are pricing in the potential for the stock to move either up or down into the end of the week of about 2%, or around 42 cents. Vol is up, so there is an expectation of potential violent moves in EPI, the ETF that tracks Indian stocks. Now let's take a look at the current session that's going on in Europe right now. Germany's DAX down about 0.2%. You have some banking names. Commerzbank down 2%, Deutsche Bank down 1.5%. Exporters are mixed right now. You have Volkswagen down 0.2%. While BMW and Daimler are both up about 0.6%. What's notable here is Daimler. Daimler is 6.7% of the ETF that I talk about in EWG, which tracks German stocks. That is up 0.6%. We're going to see if that actually impacts this ETF, being 6% of that ETF. the ETF EWG went out at $25.06. Roughly, the options are pricing in a 1.3 potential move either up or down 3% going into the end of the week, which is roughly around 32 cents in this $25 ETF. Vol is relatively inexpensive in the lower third. Taking a look at the UK, the FTSE is higher by about 0.3%. They did release their October retail sales off the charts, up about 1.9%. That's versus last month's, which was at 0.1%. So you see that retail sales are up dramatically in the UK, and you see that retail sales year over year is up 7.4%. The last reading when we looked at this last month was at 4.2%. So you can see that the retail segment in the UK is solid, is strong. That has boosted consumer names, and they're displaying some relative strength. And the most notable one is Diageo, up 1.2%, the big spirits distributor. That is also 2.91% of the EWU, which is the ETF that tracks stocks, large cap stocks in the UK. The EWU went out at 29.81. Let's watch this one closely on the open. The options are pricing in the potential for the underlying to move about 1% for the remainder of the week, either up or down, or roughly around 27 cents. Vol is relatively inexpensive. It's very cheap in EWU, so there's not a heightened expectation of violent moves in this ETF that tracks the UK. Taking a look at France and the CAC, trades up about 0.1% right now early in the session. That's in spite of the fact that they announced that their Q3 unemployment actually upticked about 0.1% to 10%. That's up from 9.9%. Now, Danone, which is a big retail name there, showing a positive upside move, could be holding up this market right now. Gain of about 1.3% in the session. Financials are lagging, though. BNP Paribas is the most notable one, down about 0.4%. Those two names alone right there make up about 8% of the EWQ, which is the ETF that I discussed. So you have a mixed market. I think that the move down in Danone is going to be muted by the move up in BNP Paribas. Let's watch EWQ on the open here in the States. Went out last night at 23.32. The options are pricing in for the remainder of this week for the potential for this EWQ ETF to move either up or down about 1.2% or 29 cents for the remainder of this week. Vol is a little bit more expensive, so there is a heightened expectation of potential violent moves going into expiration Friday this week. Finally, we want to take a look at Italy. I'm going to keep an eye on Italy because Italy's going to have elections that are coming up very soon, so we could see some volatility. The MIB, which is the index over in Italy that tracks all of the Italian stocks, slumped about 1.1%. You're hearing bank names like Banco Popular and Unicredit down between 3% and 6.2%. Unicredit is 5.7% of the ETF that I look at that trades here in the United States that has these Italian stocks in it. It's EWI. As I said, Unicredit is 5.7% of that ETF. EWI went out at 21.42. The options are pricing in roughly a 1.7 move, either a percent move, either up or down, or in other words, 36 cents in the remainder of this week. Vol is on the move to the upside. It's in the upper half of its 52-week range. So there's a little bit more of a heightened expectation of a movement in EWI going into the end of the week. All right, that's it for the overnight action. We're going to be coming back at 9:30 Eastern Time. That's what we're going to do what's hot on the open. So please join us here at MarketStream.live. We'll see you then.